Hey guys, Apprentice Alex here, and today we're going to do a little medieval myth busting. One of my big pet peeves with a lot of Hollywood productions and other fantasy media is the way they treat swords like lightsabers. This idea that the slightest touch slices straight through anything that it comes in contact with, whether that's human flesh, armor, etc. If you haven't explored it before, I did a little test with some chainmail, and that gave us some insight into the fact that chainmail's actually really effective. Even the butted mail, which was substantially less effective, still held up a lot better than a lot of media would have you believe. Once again, I've got my trusty beater flamberge here, and this guy is sharpened pretty accurately to a lot of the research that I've done on 14th through 16th century swords and what kind of edges you would see on these, how sharp they'd be. Basically, it's dull enough that I can grip the blade without worrying about it, but if I slid my hand up and down it, I'd be split wide open. Just as a example of comparison here, no issue cutting through the cardboard whatsoever. It's not perfect, but it is cutting, not tearing it. And that should give you an idea of about where, again, based on my research, I believe a period sword should sit. Now, what's my target going to be today? Well, we've got my wonderful friend George here from Ballistics Dummy Lab. I'll put a link in the description below. I met Chris, the CEO at Blade Show. Great guy. Super easy to get along with. And thanks to him for producing some awesome products that you have seen on just about any kind of show that involves ballistics or weapon testing, from Forged in Fire to Mythbusters. Anyway, I've set this up so we can do a little flat chop test here. We'll get into some other stuff as well. But we're going to start with doing a gravity drop. The other thing about this is we see this a lot of debate in what is a quality blow in the HEMA world. What does that constitute? Should there be a minimum threshold that we have to reach to consider it a wounding blow? Well, now that I have what we need, we're about to find out. Let's see what happens with our first test, which is going to be a weight of blade gravity chop onto George here. So looking at George's face here, we can see that there is some marking from that drop. This one's a little worse, or those drops, plural, I should say. We've got this guy over here. That looks pretty nasty wound to the cheek. Obviously, I did not get the one with the full skull setup. Little mark across the eye and nose. So you can see, that's where I dropped him earlier while I was getting set up. But you can see that, yeah, we did get some cutting, but it's not what I would call anything approaching wounding. That might cut down to the cheekbone. That might inhibit your ability to see. It doesn't look like it actually got to the eye. It looks like the clavicle actually did its job and protected the eye pretty well from that. But what we're seeing with these wounds is that they'd be very superficial with this kind of edge. And obviously if wounds is not nothing, especially with the risk of infection. But if we're talking about what's going to stop someone from coming at you, if that happened to me during a tournament, I'd probably at least step out of a round or two while I got a bandage on there. But again, I could get that deep I can get to the end of that with my fingernail. Let's see, there we go. And yeah, not going to be any kind of serious wound. I don't even, maybe you'd get a couple of stitches in that. Maybe, just because it is face, and face tends to bleed a lot. But yeah, that's not going to be a ton. However, side note on this, that is deep enough that if that was on your fingers or the back of your hand, that might cut into some tendon, and that could be a lot more damaging. Context is important with these things. Let's see what happens when we add a little poke to this. Just a light little jab, like you'd see in a lot of HEMA matches or in more kind of fencing-centric media. Now we're getting somewhere. Those quick little thrusts, those little fencing jabs, they went deep. I don't know if you can see there, but that clearly went, that's deep enough that it could get to some vital organs in the torso, or into a throat. Now, again, this is contextual. That looks like about an inch of penetration. Depending on where you get hit, that could be something that's entirely recoverable from, or that could be almost instantaneously lethal. You can see this pretty, so obviously thrusting, as far as lethal penetration, is extremely effective. There's another one. Again, I'm not putting any real body weight behind these thrusts. Those are just quick little jabs. The kind of like pokey, proddy stuff you see in HEMA a lot. Those easily went in as deep as I had range for. If I put that amount of force on to go deeper, try to go through, well, I'd push it off because I failed with my mounting system here. But more importantly, you would definitely, the only thing that would stop you from going further is if you got bound up from something inside, whether that be, well, the stickiness of the internals or the something like bone. So yeah, obviously thrusts, very effective even with very minimal force behind it. Next, we're going to look at some actual body mechanic behind some of these shots. I'm going to throw a couple of different shots, including the Zworkow. Hold on a second here. As I talk to you now, I'm going to throw a couple of different shots, including the Zworkow, which gets a lot of flack from shall we say, HEMA martial artists as not having enough oomph to really cause any damage, because a lot of times it kind of has a snap to it. I'll also throw in see if I can throw in a little SCA wrap shot, since I've also heard people say that you can't get good edge alignment on that, and I'm not good at the wrap shot, but I think I can probably do it. So anyway, let's see what happens when we add a little more oomph behind these swings, and see if we can get some some deeper penetration than what we had with the drop cuts. Now we've got few different blows here. First of all, the Zwark. So this is a false edge cut, and that cut, that's easily down to bone. I was swinging about somewhere between 3 and 4 out of 10 on these. So like a little bit of oomph behind them, but not like everything, firing for everything I'm worth. These are probably kind of the types of blows that I generally would throw while sparring with HEMA. A little bit below what I would fire as a good shot in the SCA, but not far off. So let's first look at the impact of that Zwark. That is deep, that is a gash, that is, depending on where you hit, you could find some areas of lethal penetration. Bare minimum, that's going to be debilitating, kind of no matter where you hit. Number 2, the wrap shot. Again, I'm not a wrap specialist. I don't usually use one-handed weapons, but that's still a long, deep gash, easily down into the skull. That with back of the neck, that's going to be digging into spine. Even if you have a little bit more oomph behind that, that would be breaking spine, especially because an edge of a blade is a force multiplier. Finally, just a standard Uberhau drop, vertical Uberhau dropping down. Really, interestingly, the Zwark seems to actually have gone the deepest, but it's also the most focused on a specific spot. So part of that might just be, part of that could just be where these blows landed, but overall, all 3 of these blows landed with similar penetration. The Zwark went a little deeper, but the small Uberhau and the wrap shot both went in, and all of these are not necessarily instantly lethal, but certainly debilitating. And these are not again, these are not like full-on swings, but they have some mechanic behind them. They are not the lightsaber tap like we saw in the first strike clips. That was literally blade weight, literally tapping. All right, before we go into just let's have some fun and destroy George here. Let's have one last little test. And this is something that I've been really curious about. What happens when we add a layer of just modern cotton to the question? So I'm going to add the t-shirt off of my back. Well, because it's a shop t-shirt and it already is a little holy. But anyway, I'm going to throw a t-shirt over this ballistic's head, and we're going to spin it around so we have a relatively clean side over here. And we're going to see if a t-shirt would stop a sword from slicing George. So, yeah, we'll try that out. Now, these are the old cuts over here. So those aren't what we're looking at. We're looking at this side of the head. And amazingly, that thin layer of fabric, it's from the old wrap shot, actually stopped. Wow. That is just a regular cotton band t-shirt. This is not any kind of protective material. And it stopped a sword. Again, I'm throwing with some mechanic here, like a 3 out of 10. But I'm astounded that little layer of cotton made a huge difference. Anyway, now we're gonna take a. You know what? Actually, I'm gonna derail my own plan here a little bit. And I'm going to actually throw a like a 9 or a 10 out of 10 shot into the t-shirt to see if it protects the head from the sword. Keep in mind, these are slashes or chops. They are not draw cuts. I think draw cuts, I know I can cut through a t-shirt with a draw cut with a sword, but let's see what happens then. So, interesting. We got some cut here. I didn't actually throw 10 out of 10, mostly because I get nervous about making sure that I'm giving good targeting, and I do less than that. But here's from the wrap shot. Here's from the, this is just that chop, that Uberhau chop. And yeah, it's, if you look here at that depth, and you compare that to the Zorkow, that is very similar depth, and this was probably 7 or 8 out of 10, and the Zork was like 3 out of 10. The Zork on this one didn't go quite as deep, but the targeting wasn't as good, and obviously that was a rolling Zork. That wasn't really a normal target area for me. I guess I do target that area. That would be like a hip shot in terms of height. Still, that's pretty good. But the really amazing thing about that is I have my t-shirt back on. It didn't cut through the t-shirt. It cut under the t-shirt. The force multiplier, that is that edge, cut under the t-shirt without doing a ton of damage to the t-shirt without the slicing action of a draw cut. That's super fascinating to me. What this tells me is that a simple layer of fabric can completely change the amount of force necessary to deal wounding blows. Now, finally, we're just going to see what happens when I kind of have some fun here and really go all out. And we'll do a little check-in on that afterwards. Anyway, this has been a fascinating video, and yeah, we'll do a full wrap-up when once I've had my fun and get some short bait out of this. So, George, did you enjoy making that? No, I did not. Surprise, surprise. Anyway, here's the really interesting thing about all this. So, first of all, the pet peeve in Hollywood that I had was swords being treated like lightsabers. So that's what I refer to as like just a touch. What we found with the testing with the ballistics material, and I do again apologize that I screwed up. This has nothing to do with the quality of the product of Ballistics Dummy Lab. They were fantastic. I screwed up with assembling a mounting system for it. That was on me. I made a mistake with that. However, still plenty useful for the purposes of this testing. First up, simply the weight of the blade on a pivot point, i.e. a hand, so just dropping down, not enough to cause any serious harm. Maybe a little bit of bleeding. Now, a trained swordsman, martial artist like myself, not saying I am a master by any stretch of the imagination, but I am trained, I am a competitor within sword sports. I am trained within historical European martial arts, SCA heavy list, dabbled a little bit in Buhurt. Anyway, my 3 out of 10 is enough to cause some serious wounding on bare flesh. However, when a thin layer of cotton was added to the mix, that changed things so that now it requires somewhere between a 6 and an 8 to cause any kind of real serious wounding. To cut through the 2/3 of a head that I had here, I had to go pretty damn hard. Again, this is not a razor sharp edge on this sword. This is my attempt to match the edge that would have been on a period sword, which is what a lot of, kind of fantasy is trying to emulate for a lot of their weapons, other than, your glamdrangs and your stings and your Brissingers, your legendary Excaliburs, your legendary mythical blades that have a supernatural edge. That's not what we're looking at. We're looking at just kind of the average sword that your adventurer just grabbed off of the floor from, looted from a corpse. Also, the thrusts, even very light thrusts, tended to dig deep. During the final, I'm just having a fun phase, I was able to, with, no hard mounting on this, so this is literally just its weight against the sawhorse here, because my mounting system, again, failed and caused the gel to split. With that, I should have paused and shown it more closely on the camera, but I saw 3 or 4 inches of deep penetration. With a stiffer backing, i.e., 180 to 220 pound body, that would have been kept going. The gel material is obviously well known for being similar density, almost identical density human flesh. Obviously, the human body contains many different tissues, so this is something of an average. However, it is worth noting that the difference between draw cuts and slices and chops is noticeable. That's especially a big factor with the shirt. If Blossfakten in HEMA is looking to emulate the unarmored fencing from period, even not necessarily to the death, but just to draw blood, that's good. That's some things that are going to want to be talked about with your local tournament organizer. Anyway, this has been a super fascinating experience, and really, I absolutely would love to hear your thoughts on this. I really hope to do more of this kind of testing, and I hope that if people bring up some questions about what's been done here, different variables that I didn't take into account here, we can continue on to do this. So yeah, like, comment, subscribe, and thanks for checking us out.